Good morning. Today and on Wednesday, we'll look at Kripke's reading of Wittgenstein in these central passages in the investigation. Today I'll just set out what I take Kripke's basic pictures of what's going on here, and start out by looking at what he calls the skeptical paradox. So suppose you consider your own present use of the word plus. 3 plus 4 is 7 and all that, the notion you first learned all those many years ago. So I guess we have all done a certain number of actual additions in the past, but most of us, well, for any of us, there will be some large number such that we haven't done any additions beyond that number, if you see what I mean. You might have added a million and got 2 million, but there's going to be some number that you never got up to, because some numbers are very, very large, right? So Kripke supposes that it's 57, that you've never added beyond 57, but I know that we're all hyper-sophisticated, many of you will probably have added beyond 57 at some point, but if you think 57 is not the right number for you, then just pencil in 10 Googles or whatever your favourite large number, whatever you think the number might be, that you never got beyond. So here are two hypotheses as to what you meant by plus when you used it in the past. One is you meant addition. The other is when you were using plus in the past, what you meant was quos. And here's what quos means. X quos y is the same as x plus y if x and y are both less than 57. Follow me very closely. And if either x or y is identical to or greater than 57, then x quos y is 5. Okay, so let's just do a couple of exercises. What's 5 plus 3? 8. What's 5 quos 3? Very good. What's 56 plus 1? What's 56 quos 1? Very good. What's 57 quos 1? Very okay. Okay. Well, right. So here are two hypotheses as to what you meant in the past when you were using plus. That you meant addition or that you meant quos. And the trouble is to see how we're going to decide between them. I suppose, for example, that in the past you always meant plus. Suppose we just take for granted that you always meant plus, but I assigned the meaning quos to the plus sign. Is there going to be any difference between us? Well, let's break it down. Would there be any difference in the answers that you and I had given to any particular calculations? There would?
Oh, even if you had never added that.
About 57. Right, remember we're taking 57 to be a very large number. Right, I mean, if you don't like 57 for that purpose, take 10 to the 57. Yeah. Okay, so would there be any difference in the answers we'd given to any particular calculations? No, because for everything below 57, then we only ended up below 57, and for everything up to 57, x plus y and x plus y get the same answer. So there'd be no difference there. So there's no difference in what answers we've given to any particular sums. You mean plus, I mean quos, but when we use the cross sign, we both have given the same answers to any particular calculation. So where would the difference between us be if you meant plus and I meant quos? Because after all, I might say, well, by the cross sign, I mean addition. You say, oh, that's funny, by the cross sign, I meant addition too. We use the same word, addition, right? So what's going through our mind when we do all these calculations is just the same. You look at 56 plus 1 and say 57, I look at 56 plus 1 and I say 57, and what's going through our minds is just the same when we do those calculations. So everything that went through our minds in the past, when we were using the cross sign, was just the same. So we agreed in the answers we gave to every particular calculation, and what was running through our minds as we did it was the same. And Kripke says, well, was there any past fact about me that mandates that you meant about what you meant by plus, that mandates what you should do now? Well, there's no telling the difference between you and me, whether you meant plus or whether you meant quos. What is the difference? There isn't any difference between you and me. You meant one thing and I meant the other. So if you ask, was there anything in your past life that commits you to saying 59 when you're asked what 57 plus 2 is, rather than 5? The answer is no, because I meant plus all the time, and it's fine for me to say 5. But you only had it going through your head or in the answers you gave, just the same thing I did. So there wasn't any past fact about you that was committing you, that was mandating you to give one answer rather than another now. So there's nothing that makes it the case that you meant plus rather than quos. There isn't any difference between us. And similarly, that's what's true about the past. The same is true right now. If you ask about what's running through your head right now, there's nothing about you right now that makes it so that you currently mean addition rather than coaddition by the plus sign. But this is pretty far-reaching, this, because you can construct this kind of example for any sign, whatever. Here's Kripke. Wittgenstein thinks that any construal that looks for something in my present mental state to differentiate between my meaning addition or coaddition, or that will show that in the future I should say 125 when asked about 68 plus 57, is there anything in my present mental state that will differentiate addition or coaddition, meaning addition or coaddition, or implying that I've got to say 125 rather than 5? That's a misconstrual. That's attributing to the ordinary person a notion of meaning that's refuted by these skeptical arguments. By the skeptical argument, he means the kind of thing we've just been working through already today and last week, where you say, well, what could there be in the actual calculations you made, in your actual behaviour, or in what was running through your mind? Could there be anything there that would differentiate meaning addition or coaddition, or dictating that the right answer is 125? I'm saying there's nothing there. But that is a really radical conclusion. It seems very simple. The argument is very, very simple and very, very forceful, but it implies that there's nothing in your mind right now that constitutes you meaning one thing rather than another by the sign. I just set it up for addition and coaddition, but obviously you could do this again and again for endlessly many different possible meanings for the sign. Consider the notion of zaddition, which you get for 58 when you substitute 58 for 57, or vaddition when you substitute 60 for 57. You see what I mean? There is endlessly many alternative possibilities here. So there's nothing in your mental state that constitutes you meaning one thing rather than another by the sign. But if that's right, then there's no such thing as anyone presently assigning any particular meaning to the cross. But the argument is obviously quite general. You could do this for any sign at all. If you take a notion like chair, where you mean by chair just what we regularly, by the word chair, you just mean a regular chair. When I say chair, I mean a word that applies to anything if it's a chair that's been observed before the year 2013. but come 2013, it will apply only to zebras. Is there anything in our minds that will differentiate between what you mean by chair and what I mean by chair? Nothing in which objects we've applied the word chair to in the past, and nothing in what was running through our minds when we were using the term in the past. So you can do this for any term, whatever. So there's no such thing as anyone presently assigning any particular meaning to a plus sign, or indeed to any other sign, given the great generality of the argument. The argument is so simple. So here's Kripke. Wittgenstein's main problem is, it appears, that he has shown all language and all concept formation to be impossible, indeed unintelligible. I mean, it's not that there's something very difficult here that we wish we could do. It's that when you think through what it is that success would be, you see you can't make any sense of it. There's no such thing as being successful. There's no such thing as meaning.
Can't we, though, take into consideration the kinds of restrictions that plus would put on these summations that the plus sign would? I mean, certainly there's nothing in the anything being before 57 that would be different. But when faced with the plus sign, we can test the kinds of additions that we can put that are past 57, and we can see that they do yield different answers.
Right.
So so it seems just like that. Anything prior to anything below 57 is just ambiguous, but that doesn't mean that we mean that there is no fact matter about it.
Yeah, well, once you and I actually do use the plus sign for a number in connection with numbers that are above 57, then you'll go one way and I'll go another. Yeah. But the question is, was there anything in what was in our minds before we got above the 57 that dictated our going one way rather than another? The previous examples on which we agreed don't dictate our going one way rather than another. And for any general formula, like, well, by the plus sign in addition, you and I can both agree on that. Right? That's like that thing about the x plus 1 that just is dragged around after the particular examples. If you were asked what you meant by addition, you'd say, well, 0 plus 1 is 1, 0 plus 2 is 2, and so on. You'd give lots of examples. If you asked me what I meant by addition, I'd say 0 plus 1 is 1, and I'd give the same examples as you, below 57. Yeah. So then the question is, before we get up to these high numbers above 57, was there anything in what was happening then that dictated that you should go one way and I should go the other? And that's the point. If the answer to that is no, then it seems like we have a completely free choice when we get to 57, you and I. There was nothing that dictated that you meant one thing rather than the other. But that's already to give you the conclusion. Okay.
It seems like, though, even if you're below 57, you still have the notion of plus as opposed to plus line. It may not make a difference, but you can still keep thinking about it.
You can still have in mind plus addition rather than quaddition.
So if you take the set of all numbers,
that's a lot, yes.
Numbers prior or below and above 57, you're going to use plus as opposed to plus.
Right.
And so even though for numbers below 57, it may not make a difference, for all the numbers that you're worried about, you're going to use plus. And in the case of below 57, it happens to be that is the same as plus.
Your task is to show that there's something different going on in your mind and in my mind even before we start adding the high numbers, right? Okay. So what was the difference?
The difference was that in my mind, I'm taking the numbers below 57 as a part of a larger set.
Right.
And so even though in the case of below 57, it doesn't make a material difference, I still have, I guess in the background somewhere that I'm using plus instead of plus.
In my mind. Well, the thing is, for me to be using quas, right, I need not be using an explicit definition like that. When you say addition, I mean, it is possible to define addition, yep. But usually when a regular person is using addition, they're not using some fancy set theoretical definition of what addition is. Yeah? Addition is just a primitive. So for me, quas is just a primitive. It's not defined in terms of anything. I mean, when we find out what's going on, I might say, oh, when you're using the plus sign, you're using some really, really weird notion. You mean, what you mean is x plus y is x quas y if for xy less than 57. And you've got some really weird notion here. If xy are greater than or equal to 57, then you're going to say this is x zaddition y, right? Where zaddition is x quas y, zaddition is 0 if x and y are less than 57, and x plus y if x and y are greater than or equal to 57. So actually you're using this really weird defined notion, right? How peculiar. Yeah, I was just thinking of the whole set of numbers and coaddition and addition for all of them. Yeah, you had this funny defined notion. We're both regarding them as primitive. But, you regard addition as primitive, I regard coaddition as primitive. Yeah. Neither of us regards it as a defined notion, but each of us can regard the other as defining some weird counterintuitive defined notion.
It still seems weird because you can articulate that. I mean, you can give a rule.
That's right.
In most normal cases, you might think that it is simple just because most people don't give a definition for addition or coaddition or addition. But it's still possible. I mean,
that's right. It's possible to articulate these things, yeah, but you've got to rely on a primitive notion of addition that for you is addition, if you see what I mean, and for me is coaddition. You take addition as primitive, I take coaddition as primitive. Or what's possible in both cases is definition. But definition always depends on what stock of primitives you have. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
So you saying that if two people are quasing and quasing, even the lower numbers are going to be the same,
yep.
The quasser still has some concept of quas lingering in the back of the head.
Right.
But I think that's a mistake because there's a difference between defining the way the function works on all inputs
yes.
and then applying that function to specific inputs to give an output, right? So if I say x plus 3 and then you 2, you say 5, right? So in addition, we have different rules for adding fractions, right? We're thinking about find the lowest common denominator, all this stuff, but when I'm adding 2 plus 3 is 5, I'm not thinking about what I do with fractions.
No, that's true.
So similarly, a quasser isn't thinking about what they do with numbers greater than 57.
Right. If I'm following you, then the point is that someone using quas might be just, how should I say, if you asked, what's 23 plus 2, most of us would just, as you might say, unthinkingly say 25. It's not that you run through some back-up operation here. And you're saying similarly for the quasser, when they say, what's 23 quas 2, they don't do some calculation. They just say 25. They don't need to explicitly look and say, are they less than 57? They don't consult a definition. They don't do anything like that. They just unthinkingly say 25. Yeah, I think that's exactly the picture. That's right. Yeah.
So I understand the difference between a function and applying the function in
yeah.
particular cases. But all the same. You can have functions. So the point you made here is that you can have different notions of what's primitive.
Yes,
You can still
right.
articulate what's primitive. You can still have that in your mind, and you can test that against what somebody else articulates as primitive. So you say, I'm weird because I'm using plus, and really the primitive thing is plus.
Yeah.
But I could still say to you that really the primitive thing is plus and not plus, and so we can have an argument about that.
Right. Well, we could if we could get to that point. But the thing is, when you say we can make that explicit or you can articulate it, what the primitive thing is, yeah. Well, the thing is, what do you say is the primitive thing? If you're, how can I put this, a regular guy? How would you prove what your primitive is? You say addition, right? Yeah. Well, the thing is, that's what I say. I say it's addition. And if there isn't any definition to appeal to here, because I'm both taking it. You say, well, when I say addition, I mean something primitive. I say, sure, when I say addition, I mean something primitive. So it's not clear what articulate means here with a primitive, or it doesn't even give a definition. So the people behind you want to come in and just this, I think. Yeah, one, two. Yeah.
I see what you mean by there is a difference between both, as we just discussed. But how do you differentiate the primitive addition prior to the concept of addition and plus prior to the concept from yes or thus or all of these different ones? In saying that there is, in trying to distinguish, I would see that all of these other notions, like plus, just depend on these primitive notions of plus. And that you couldn't build plus, so you couldn't build plus or yes or this, because, this is plus.
So can you do that later?
I feel like you may have answered it, not.
Okay.
All right, Paul.
There was one other person behind you wanted to. Course has inherent contradictions. Right. No, wait a minute. Oh, 50 plus 7 is identical to 57. Yes, that's right. Yeah. No, wait a minute. Yeah, you have to make up your mind. There are two different calculations you might mean by 50 plus 7 plus 1. Okay. It's 58, right?
Yeah. But then you do 57 plus 1, you get 5.
Right?
And that's a contradiction.
Is that right? I thought that's what a contradiction. Contradiction is P and not P, right? Okay. Do it. Give me
Well, then you, since you can only two places, you just go backwards. You go 50 plus 1, you go 50 plus, that's showing you deciding 1.
50 plus 1 is 51, right?
So that's showing that you're deciding 1 to the second step, and then you go that.
This thing is hopeless. The best you can hope for is I get confused. But if you look at the definition, just a second, if you go back to the definition of quos, right, this is perfectly well defined. There really isn't a contradiction in this. And if you just think of that as you really might want to construct a function like that in doing some mathematical problem, some simple mathematical problem. Yeah. No reason why not. It just is well defined. And I think that I don't want to force you to go on this too long, but I really don't see how you could be getting a contradiction there. It would be an absolute revolution if you did. I mean, if from a simple definition like that looks perfectly sensible, you could generate a contradiction. There is more to say about this, but I think it's not going to take. There's more to say about how you might get into difficulty here, trying to use quos, but I don't think it's going to take the form of just generating something in the form P and not P. I don't see how that can happen. Well, one, two. Right.
Quos can be defined in terms of our normal notation of addition, but the opposite is not true. You can't totally define double function addition for all numbers, just the notion of quos and the numbers themselves.
I don't see why not. I mean, so long as you have a notion like zaddition, well, x and y, x z y, x zus y is 0 if x and y are less than 57, right? And if otherwise, x zus y is x plus y, right? So then ordinary addition. That's right. That's right. The question is
Together are more primitive than
addition. Yeah.
so, but still on a certain understanding of primitive. We see addition.
That's right. On the understanding of primitive, on which addition is primitive, then addition is more primitive, sure. But the whole trouble is who gets to say what's primitive. Yeah. And it's kind of more basic than that. It's that once you acknowledge that whatever you do, some signs are primitive, what gives those primitive signs their meanings? And the thing is, what happens in a finite set of initial cases isn't enough to give those signs their meanings. And since they're not defined signs, there's no general formula you can appeal to as what gives them their meanings. So really, it's a very simple problem, but it's very general. One, two, yeah.
It's not totally obvious to me that in order to talk about addition of plus 1, you really need to be able to think about using any terms. So it seems like we actually fully define that addition, actually by considering the finite number of terms. So we think back to how you learn to add larger numbers in grade school, you always do it with this, you have 571, and then you write the 20 below it, and you write a line plus, and then you do that addition by doing addition along just 2 digits.
Right, yes.
It seems like the only rules we really need are, or at least possibly the only rules we really need are just the addition of numbers 0 to 9, this rule of carrying over, and I mean, maybe the tricky part in defining this